team old Carlton knows. With all the champions they like to send up, we'll keep our end up, and they will know that they've been playing against the famous old dark blues.
Well, hello everybody. That song can only mean one thing, and that thing is that we had a Carlton victory. So as everyone knows, my name is Joseph Lutzer. I'm welcome to Blue Sunday. Joining me back in Melbourne is the one, the only, the co-host of the show, Carlton Life member, former president of the Carltonian Coterie Group, Mr. Vince Lochisano. Good evening, Vince.
Well, good evening to you, Joe. And I've got to say, what a magnificent performance last night. Just unbelievable victory. And I really want to congratulate everyone at the Australian Matildas soccer team. Oh, sorry, we're doing Carlton, are we?
Oh, that's right. That's the other show. It's the other show.
Yeah, no, what a great victory for both teams. Carlton beating Melbourne last night. And, isn't it great to see the Matildas getting up in a very dramatic penalty shootout last night against France and into a semi-final now against our Ashes enemy, England. So hopefully we can knock off the Poms in two different sports within about a month.
Might be a moral victory. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's get through the formalities first. So as everyone knows, we are coming to you on Facebook and YouTube. So please, can I get everyone to give us a like, share, and subscribe at Facebook? We're called Blue Sunday. And on YouTube, we are still Blue Sunday, but we come to you via the Jumper Punch channel. And as people know, we have a very strong emphasis on the Carlton Football Club. We do give the other football clubs a bit of a run through. We show them the results and stuff like that. Also, if you would like to take part in the show, we encourage your involvement. Remember, this show is not only for Vince, myself, and our special guest, Mr. Peter Brown, but it is for you guys as well. So please feel free to give us some opinions, some comments, some questions, feedback, and we'll try to endeavour to answer all of them. And last but not least, this show is proudly brought to you by Retired Working For You Tours. We do all tours in Thailand. We specialise in Thailand. So for those of you that haven't been, I encourage you to come along. Vince, as you mentioned, it's been a big weekend in all sport, really, when you think about it.
It's been huge.
We've had the finish of round 22, 2 rounds to go, and we're still no clearer on the top 8. I mean, the top 4, well, maybe the top 3 look settled. A couple of the Carlton guys are still thinking that we may be a slight chance for the top 4. I don't know. I think the draws probably cost us.
The draw could cost us, and the draw could actually help us, depending on how you look at it.
And as you mentioned, the Matildas got through to the
semi-final?
Yes. So that was a big weekend. Start of the Premier League. So that was all last night, and all these ridiculous contracts going around. And for the Melbourne Storm viewers, I believe the Storm got up, so that's good. Gina Harris keeps me abreast of that on the Blue Sunday page. So, big weekend, Vince. Big weekend.
It could have even been bigger if a certain girls' football team yesterday had have managed to win their grand final. My daughter, Sienna, a big shout out to her. She played a really good game. In fact, a lot of people thought that she was the best player on her teams, on the ground for her team. So she certainly, from an individual point of view, tried her guts out, but they weren't good enough. And Aberfeldy lost to Keilor yesterday. So well done to them. But that's my daughter's second losing grand final in succession. So hopefully it'll be third time lucky next year.
Let's hope. Hey, before we get on to the football, Vince, let's have a few funny photos and memes that I've been picking up throughout the week. So the first one, I can't resist. Sorry, Tanya. How good are the Bombers? World beaters. Beat the Eagles by 1 point. Their average losing margin this year is 72 points. It's good of the Bombers to just get home. They probably should have lost. And then they followed that up with a powerful resolve over the team that's also won 2 games and has an average losing margin of 40 points, North Melbourne. So, destiny, premiership destiny beckons, not for the Bombers. And for the
I think they'd be more. I think they're happy just to bank the 4 points on each win, and they're hoping that if they can get over GWS next week and Collingwood in the final week, that they might be able to sneak into the 8. But who knows, Joe? If they happen to sneak into 8th position and we maintain our 5th position, it might be a Carlton versus Essendon elimination final.
Well, one can only hope because we've got the wood on them.
Then again, yeah. if we win our last 2 matches and say Melbourne loses their last 2, and I think Hawthorn, the way they're going, they're no easy beats. They've got to beat Hawthorn next week. If they lose to Hawthorn and then lose to Sydney up in Sydney in their last game, we might pinch their 4th position, and it'll be a Carlton versus Collingwood qualifying final, which will be the first time the 2 sides have played in a final since exactly 35 years ago when Carlton and Collingwood played in a qualifying final in 1988, where we actually ended up running all over the top of them in the last quarter. I think we won by about 45 points. So, wouldn't that be unbelievable if Carlton and Collingwood played in the final?
Can only hope. And for those of you that didn't know, I'm a mathematician, so I'd like you to show this bit of maths to your wives and girlfriends. So 1 beer, a couple of beers. So when you're telling your wife you're having a few beers, tell her that's how many a few beers is. So I'm sure many of you have got in trouble. How many beers have you had? The officer, just a few. So not only policemen, please don't look at my mathematics.
That reminds me of a different one I saw once where, a guy goes into a pub and, he has 1 beer and he sees this pretty average-looking woman. After 1 beer and after 5 beers, all of a sudden she starts to look a lot nicer. And then after 10 beers,
you can't say that, Vince.
She's an absolute stunner.
The views expressed by Mr. Vince Lochasano are not those expressed by Peter Brown and Joe Lutz.
No, that's not my view. I'm just relating to you about a particular sketch I saw once. But anyway.
He's the new field umpire. That's going to be their uniform next year.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I thought I'd throw this other one in for you, Vince.
I'll tell you what, a few Melbourne people reckon that they ought to have worn it last night. But anyway.
Oh, yeah.
After that decision right at the end. Anyway.
And there's Vince learning how to swear. If I were to hit this rock with that stick, I could knock it into the hole. Probably not. And a couple of funny photos.
Is that how golf made its first beginnings?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so.
Yeah.
Now, have a look at this photo.
Yeah.
On the left there is a man in there fixing up a telecom wire.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck spotting him, but he actually is in there. and the photo on the right, someone still needs to explain this to me. It's a picture of the Nigerian soccer team, and they've got their hands over, their private part. I don't know why, because I always thought they were women. So I think someone needs to explain why they would have to cover up their testicles. But anyway,
well, maybe they're protecting their own nether regions, Joe.
I don't know, Vince.
You don't have
I'm not a girl.
You don't have to have a man's anatomy to necessarily want to protect that part of the body, even if you're a girl, surely.
I don't know. And this is the last one. Flip the bird to the pigeon, he'll get revenge.
Yeah, that's exactly what my car looks like every time I park under a tree.
Anyway, enough of the frivolity. People are starting to talk. We'll start putting up some quotes and stuff about Carlton later on. We'll just get through this bit at the moment. Vince, it all started on Friday night. Go for it, please.
Indeed it did, and what a game it was. Geelong and Collingwood was always going to be a really keenly contested match. Last year's premiers trying to fight their way back into the 8, and Collingwood trying to reverse a slight form slump over the last couple of weeks. So it was a great game, and I must say, when Darcy Moore went down with injury in the first quarter, I thought this could be the end for them. But they fought back bravely, Collingwood, and ended up prevailing. 16 goals, 13, 109 to Geelong, 15-11, 101. And that protects Collingwood's top position on the ladder. You couldn't see anyone else beating them from here, you'd think.
No. Then the next, on Saturday, I watched this match. It was quite a good game.
Yes, indeed. Well, this one was the North Melbourne Essendon game that you mentioned earlier. North were brave. They almost could have pinched this in Ben Cunnington's last game of football, and didn't he play a great game for his last one, and kicked a couple of goals as well. So well done to him. A very good career. But in the end, it was Essendon who prevailed. 13 goals, 86 to North Melbourne, 12-5. 77. So that keeps the Bombers' final 8 hopes alive.
Okay, the next game, Vince?
Next one was over at the Sydney Cricket Ground between the Sydney Swans and Gold Coast. Again, Gold Coast are always in these sorts of matches. In fact, they've got a pretty good record there at the SCG, but this time the Swans kicked away in the third quarter, kicking 6 goals to 2, and that proved to be the quarter that really made the difference. 18 goals, 6, 114. Very good kicking for goal. To the Gold Coast Suns, 13-12, 90. A 24-point victory to the Swans, and that brings them into the 8, as we will find out shortly.
Okay, next.
Next is... this is the game at the Gabba. Now, didn't Brisbane get a scare there? I mean, they've got an impeccable record at the Gabba, but it was under threat at one stage, and Adelaide were brave. That loss probably signals the end of their finals chances. Brisbane prevailing 15-9, 99. Only 24 scoring shots to Adelaide's 28, 13, 15, 93, and yet, as we always keep saying, bad kicking is bad football. And, Adelaide had a chance to win that, but in the end, Brisbane prevailed by a goal, and that gives them back second position on the ladder.
Right. Then there was the traditional trouncing of West Coast.
Well, West Coast have actually been in pretty good form the last couple of weeks. They had a victory over North Melbourne 2 weeks ago, and then they came within a whisker of knocking off Essendon last week and ended up losing by a point. But this week they were back to their bad old, form from before that. So the Fremantle Dockers seem to have found their best football when it's all over, bar the shouting, and they can't make the finals. So in the end, they won by 101 points, 2014, 134 to the West Coast, 4 goals, 933. So big percentage boosting win there for Fremantle, but in the end, it's not going to account for much.
Okay, next.
Well, this was the big upset in some people's eyes for the round. Hawthorn, well, aren't they giant killers at the moment? They've beaten Brisbane at the MCG. I think they beat Collingwood last week, and now they've followed it up and beaten the Western Bulldogs down in Tasmania today in Launceston. 9 goals, 13, 67 to the Doggies, 9-10, 64. That's another very close loss for the Doggies. They've had a few of those this year, and it might end up costing them a spot in the 8. They are just hanging on at the moment by a thread. So they'll want to win their next 2 matches just to make sure of it. But, one of those matches is down in Geelong, against Geelong in the last round. So, all the Doggy supporters must be feeling pretty nervous about their chances of retaining that spot in the 8 at the moment.
Okay. And then today, later on after that, there was St Kilda.
Yes, this afternoon, St Kilda played Richmond and showed that they really do have what it takes to win matches like this and to retain their spot in the 8. They're a very solid 6th position at the moment behind us. They're half a game behind us, and they're half a game in front of Sydney. So they're in 6th position outright, and they've managed to very much get the better of Richmond early on today, and they retained that lead most of the way through the game. 14-9, 93 to the Richmond Tigers, 8-9, 57. And as we said last week, their season was pretty much over. And if there was any doubt about it, it's definitely over now.
Okay. And the game that just finished?
Yes, big win and big form reversal for Port Adelaide today. You know, a lot of people gave GWS a chance the way they've been going in recent weeks, but they were, outplayed from the very first quarter today. So Port Adelaide back to winning ways, 21 goals, 10, 136 to GWS, 13 goals, 7, 85, a 51-point victory, and a good percentage boosting victory as well for Port Adelaide. And GWS have now lost their position in the 8. They're out on percentage at the moment.
Okay, and the game that we're all wanting to hear?
Yes. The one last night, wow. It was probably the lowest scoring game for the round when it comes to total combined score. But at the end of the day, wow, what a contest. And it was just so even all the way through, wasn't it? I mean, both sides kicked 1 goal each in the first quarter. They both kicked 2 goals each in the second quarter, separated only by 2 points at halftime. Both kicked 3 goals each in the third quarter to be 6 goals, 642, each of 2 at three-quarter time. And in the end, Carlton, 9 goals, 660, kicking 3 goals to Melbourne's 2 in the last quarter, 8 goals, 856. If it was a different decision by the umpire, it would have been a 1-point win to Melbourne. But as it turns out,
he touched it. Anyway, we'll talk about
Carlton
in a minute.
gets the better of the decision, and we go on to win our 8th game in succession. Now, the last time we won 8 games in a row or better was in the year 2000 when we won 13 games in a row. But I'll tell you what, I cannot remember Carlton ever having a winning streak like this on the back of a previous 8 or 9 week stretch where we'd lost 8 out of 9. So It's just an amazing turnaround. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it by anybody, to be honest.
No. Well, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Let's
go
through,
now what I should do before we go through, just wanted to mention goal kickers. For Carlton, Owies kicked 2, Curnow kicked 2, Doherty got 1, Akers 1, Cripps 1, and DeConning 1 as well. So the only multiple goal scorer for Melbourne was Petrarca with 2. So a very even performance. No one really kicked the bag. And Charlie just got the 2 goals for the night, but he maintains his 5-goal lead at the head of the Coleman medal because Taylor Walker only kicked 2 for Adelaide as well. So let's hope Charlie can hold on in those last 2 rounds.
All right, and go quickly through the ladder, Vince.
Yes, indeed. The ladder sees Collingwood on top. They'd have to lose their last 2 matches, and Brisbane would have to win their last 2 in order to lose top spot. And, in fact, those 2 sides meet next Friday night in a blockbuster at Marvel Stadium. So that should be a really interesting contest. So Collingwood at the moment is on top on 68 points from Brisbane and Port Adelaide, who are both on 60. They both won their matches this weekend. Melbourne was the only team in the top 4 to lose one to us. They are on 56 points. Carlton in 5th position on 50. St Kilda on 48, Sydney on 46 are now in the 8. So they've got a huge match next weekend against Adelaide, and then they finish off with Melbourne at home. So they've got 2 challenging games ahead of them to maintain their spot in the 8. And then you've got 3 teams all on the verge of the 8th position. Western Bulldogs in the 8 at the moment with their percentage of 108.5. on 44 points ahead of Essendon and GWS, who are both in the high 90s. Then you've got Geelong looming large if they can win their last 2 matches. They've got St Kilda next weekend, and finally with Western Bulldogs at home. They're on 42 points, 117.5%, so a healthy percentage. Adelaide's on 40, technically with a mathematical chance, 115.8%. Then I think you'll find that these last 6 sides are all gone. That's Richmond on 38, Fremantle 36, Gold Coast 36. Hawthorn step up to 28 with their 7th win of the season, and clearly well above the teams below them who are North Melbourne and West Coast, both with only the 2 wins on the board.
Okay, so thanks for that, Vince, for the quick wrap-up. Right, now it's time to introduce our special comments man. He is a 1979 premiership player. I like to call him the utility because he played both forward and back, but I'll let him tell you where his favourite position is. Mr. Peter Brown. Good evening, Pete. How are you?
Good evening, Joe. Good evening, Vince, and good evening to our viewers. How are
G'day,
we?
Brownie.
Do you call yourself a forward, a back, or a utility?
I didn't mind playing in any place, really.
As long as
you got a game.
Yeah, as long as I got a game. I said to Joe that all my junior football was actually as a midfielder more than anything else. In fact, as a very, very young junior player, I played more in the centre and in ruck duels rather than, and that's when I could jump a bit. So that's where I played.
Is that when you had pace, Pete? When you were young?
When I was, sorry?
When you were young, is that when you had all that blistering pace?
No. What happened, Joe, in the country, the grounds are slightly different to what they are.
Yeah, they're a bit muddy.
Top level. And I found that everyone used to come back to my pace, and it was it made me look quick.
That's the main thing. Before we get Peter's outlook on the game and Vince's, let us just quickly go through some stats. Mr. Vince, can you do the honours, please?
Yes, indeed. No problems. Well, we see that Carlton is on the left, Melbourne's on the right, us being the home team for the night. We won the disposals, but mainly because we had more kicks. They had a few more hand passes than us. Not much, but it was pretty even, I think, all the way through. I think the game was largely pretty even, Joe. We had more inside 50s, only just. Our disposal efficiency seemed to be a bit better than theirs. There it is, 72 to 66. Although their efficiency inside 50 was a lot better than ours. In fact, ours was pretty low, 28%.
I was talking about this with Pete before the game, before the show, sorry. I actually thought that was going to come bite us in the backside because, in the first quarter we had, 20-odd inside 50s for 1 goal 3. We were going back to our old habits of just bombing it, and the small forwards went at the feet, and it was just, I don't know. Look, maybe it's a lot easier in the stand, but I don't know whether it was the weather conditions. I don't know if it was nerves, or I don't know it was just going back to playing dumb football that got us the 7 losses. But anyway, at least we won. Okay, the next lot of stats. We knew we'd lose the hit-outs to Max Gawn and Brody Grundy.
Max Gawn had something like 47 hit-outs on his own.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear Brownie's views on the ruck when we finish these stats, because I actually thought that Melbourne might surprise us because of the fact that they chose Brody Grundy in I guess in place of an injured player in Harrison Petty, who was essentially a forward. It certainly was anyway when he was injured, and working out very well for them as a forward. I thought that they might have played Brody Grundy in the ruck and actually put Max Gawn up forward, who's often been good at taking marks around centre half forward and kicking goals and passing it off to his other forwards as well. So they didn't end up doing that. I was a bit surprised. I thought that they might have thrown Grundy in the first ruck, but I'm not sure what the thinking was by the Melbourne hierarchy there. But in the end, they certainly benefited from the hit-outs. But as we keep saying, it doesn't matter if you're getting hit-outs. What about the clearances? And when you have a look at the clearance numbers, overall, Melbourne only had 2 more clearances, 37 to 32 in stoppages, and we actually had more centre clearances, 11 to 8. So I don't think that the Max Gawn's dominance in hit-outs necessarily benefited their team in a big way around the ground.
No,
I thought the actual centre clearances was pivotal in the game itself, and it was shown up by that statistic there. The point that you made before, Vince, was correct. The efficiency inside 50, particularly in that first quarter, was woeful. We weren't actually looking at trying to hit targets. We were more trying to get it into the forward line and hope to God rather than try and create something efficiently. So, and that was, I mean, 1 goal 3 for the quarter with the amount of inside 50s that we had. And I mean, at one stage, they showed the amount of inside 50s and it was just dominated by Carlton.
Yep. Well, as Grant says, we should have been 6 goals up, really. But I don't know. The ball might have been like a cake of soap or nerves or whatever. So
no, I think
I guess I'll review it.
I think you'll find, Joe, that the Melbourne big men flooded back pretty quickly inside 50s, and all it was doing was creating a quagmire there. It wasn't giving us much opportunity to go to work, particularly in a spread forward line, or at least a forward line that we could actually try and create goal kicking opportunities from.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. As I said, we had a slight edge in possessions. I think we had 30-odd possessions more than they did, but they had more contested possessions, 10, in fact, 158 to 148, whereas we had a lot more uncontested possessions, 218 there to 185. So, yeah, I think they certainly matched it with us in an area that we consider ourselves very strong, and that is at the contest. And Melbourne have all year proven themselves at being a very good contest team. In fact, look, I mean, we know the result from last night, but regardless of whether it was a narrow win to us or a narrow win to them, I think both teams proved that they are both worthy finalists and both probably at the top of the form ladder in the second half of the year. And wouldn't surprise me if both teams end up in preliminary finals and potentially even a grand final.
Yeah. Okay. And
turnovers were pretty even. Marks, we had more marks than they did. They seemed to drop a lot of marks last night, Melbourne. They weren't holding on to them as much. 79 to 60. Marks inside 50, we had 3 more than them, 10 to 7. Contested marks, they had a couple more than us. Intercepts were pretty even, really, when you have a look at all that. Defence, again, marginally, they're tackling by 1. So the tackles inside 50, this is the one that really makes the difference in keeping the ball inside your forward line, and we were better at that than they were, weren't we, Brownie?
Yeah, that's where we got the stoppages. That's an area of our game that we've improved out of sight. Early in the season, they were able to walk through our forwards and be able to create something up the ground further. But this is something that we've been able to improve and gradually get better and better at it each week. And this is something that needs to be spot on when you're actually going into a finals campaign, because that's going to actually give you the opportunity of winning or not losing, or winning or losing a final. So I think that our inside tackles, our pressure gauge, if you want to call it, was very, very high, and we were able to create opportunities by purely and simply locking it in.
So, Pete, is that where you think we won the game? Our forward pressure?
I think, it was interesting. On reflection, throughout the night, it wasn't so much the spectacular stuff. It was more the grassroots stuff. It was the little toe poke. It was
1%.
It was getting a hand, or being able to knock a ball out, or free a ball, or scrag somebody and stuff like that. Early in the season, there was a couple of really massive tackles that they would have walked through earlier. If you remember the Adelaide game, they made us look like idiots because they just brushed us aside and they were able to walk through us. And that was the start of the rot going back then. And now they've really tightened up their that part of the game.
Pete,
look, if you look at all of the stats, this is the one that really stands out, doesn't it? The tackles inside 50.
Absolutely.
There's a big disparity there between the two. And I think Melbourne would be a little disappointed in their forwards not putting as much pressure on our defenders as what our forwards did to their defenders.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think what actually for mine, what it did actually create is a doubt in the mind of the Melbourne forward line being able to put that sort of pressure on both mids and backs of our side. So, and I'd say that coaches will be looking at that very closely, particularly heading in to a finals campaign. Something else very interesting, guys. And just looking at the game, the one thing that was a standout for me, this game wasn't won by controlling the corridor. I don't know whether you guys noticed it or not, but on the odd occasion, Melbourne were able to get through the corridor, and as we were. But realistically, it wasn't a game that was won by controlling the mid corridor, and it was one of those slogs where. There was a few occasions where Carlton were looking to go inside. Melbourne had cut it off, so they had no choice but to go around the long way home. And I don't know whether you also noticed or not, but there was a couple of times that Charlie came up the ground and took fairly telling marks in dangerous, what I call dangerous territory for him, which is between the forward flank and possibly the wing, where he takes a grab and then wheels around and then looks over the back. And we were able to get out the back of our opposition on a couple of occasions and actually score from that. So, and Melbourne were very slow to wake up to that, actually.
Yep.
Pete, let's go through a few players, and you can give us a bit of an opinion. One man you've been not critical, but you've had a few words about, Patrick Cripps. What do you think of his game on Saturday?
Yeah, it was interesting. As you guys were talking, I was just reading a couple of the comments, and one of the comments that came up said, "Ha, Brownie, what do you think about Cripsy now?" Well,
our viewers keep us on our toes, that's for sure, Brownie. Don't worry about that.
Absolutely. Now,
and they've got very long memories.
Absolutely, and I would expect that to keep me honest. But the reality is that Patrick Cripps early in the game was slow to start, but I felt that his leadership and his I'd say his ability to be able to create some opportunities out of nothing got stronger and better throughout the game. So in answer to your question, Joe, I was actually impressed by the captain's game on the weekend, in so much that his leadership stood up, and I expected Melbourne to be, and I honestly thought that they didn't show Cripps the respect that they should. And look, I understand that Oliver. This was his first game back, so he's going to be a little bit better for the gallop. Whilst Brodie Grundy didn't really feature in the game at all, you have to tip your hat to guys like Viney. I thought that Viney's game was still great, even though it wasn't as damaging as it probably had been in previous weeks. But Cripps's game was, and I'll be honest, I thought his game was like the Cripps of old, and his leadership was strong.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he had an excellent game.
Okay. Patrick Dow, the much maligned Paddy Dow, Patrick Dow, whatever his name is. He had 20 possessions, 410 metres, 7 tackles. He's actually quite clean with his skills when he wants to be. So
it's interesting, isn't it? Paddy Dow is now probably giving himself a really good opportunity to finish off the year very strongly, and his ability to be able to make decisions quickly was quite telling. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, one of the commentators in one of the broadcasts did suggest that the more time that Patrick Dowd stays in the middle of the ground, the more we're going to see his ability to be able to win contested ball and be able to create off something. And it was interesting. There was a couple of times there yesterday, I don't know whether you guys noticed it or not, but Cripps was actually directing traffic there, and he actually directed down into a position where when the ball up happened, Patrick Cripps, this is the skipper, was able to release down, and he was able to create something further afield. So I thought that was quite telling. I think he's going to get stronger as the and after a pre-season again. I think they'll build him up a little bit more the top half of him rather than the bottom half. I think he's quite strong in the legs, but I think the top half is the thing that's probably going to be built up a little bit. He may sacrifice a little bit of pace by doing it, but his game, I thought, was well worth watching. I think. Yeah, go on.
No, keep going.
No, I was just going to say, he's a kid now that he was a slow burn, and he's and they made him earn his spot, and he's really hungry for that spot. And I think now he's shown what he's capable of doing, and I think he will only get better. However, I do caution that he'll come under more scrutiny from other sides, particularly more so going into a final series, and he won't have that freedom that he might have had leading up to it.
I think though, to counter that, Pete, he may be lucky because if Chera and Walsh comes back, I think people are going to target probably Cripps 1, Walsh 2, or Chera 2. So he may escape that scrutiny. He may be a bit lucky. Whereas if he was at a team like North Melbourne or West Coast where he'd be the key midfielder, I think that might happen. So he may escape that scrutiny, but I guess the next few weeks will tell. I think the person that should be worried is Matthew Kennedy, because if Matthew Kennedy's fit, are we saying we're going to drop Paddy Dow to put in Matthew Kennedy, who hasn't played for 4 or 5 weeks? I mean, we've got a lot of selection dilemmas. No. We've got a lot of selection dilemmas coming up.
And the other thing there is that I said a few weeks ago that some competitive tension, particularly amongst players, is really good going into a final series. So,
yeah, my word.
And that also allows us, for example, Sam Doherty. Now, Sam's got a corky. Now, how deep that corky's going to be, who knows? They subbed him out in the game yesterday. So to sub Doherty out when they did, that shows that they've got great faith in possibly guys like Dowd and these guys to do a job when things get a bit tight. So if Doherty doesn't come up because of the injury, then we've got the ability to be able to cover that by having that competitive tension with those guys coming in. Sorry, Vince, I stopped you before. Right. You were going to say?
No, that's no problem. I was interested to hear your thoughts. Look, I think Paddy Dow's playing so well that, he and probably still with a good couple of games to go before guys like Chera and Walsh are probably ready to come back. So if he keeps playing in this vein of form, I can't see how you could justify dropping him. I mean, he's been much maligned for sometimes disposing of the ball in an inefficient manner. But yesterday he was at 80% from his 20 possessions, and he had 6 score involvements. One of his passes to Charlie Curnow was absolutely superb. He had 7 tackles. 3 of those inside 50, as a matter of fact. So 3 of those inside 50 tackles that we spoke about before were just him. And he had 4 clearances, 5 inside 50s. How can you drop a player who's doing that? He only had the one clanger. And I really believe that he's playing himself into a new contract. He may very well be offered another 12-month or 2-year contract the way he's going. Last week they gave Nick Newman a new contract after not Nick Newman, Zach Fisher a new contract after coming back and playing 1 good game.
That's ridiculous, right?
Talk about jumping the gun. But anyway, I don't think Paddy Dow's doing anything wrong. I think he's got largely the sympathy of the Carlton faithful because of the fact that he's never come out and whinged. He's never complained about the way he's been treated. He's just gone back to the VFL if he's had to. or been the sub and done as well as possible in the one quarter that he's been brought on for. And I think everyone knows that this guy is doing everything that could be asked of him. And he's finally got his opportunity and he's grabbing it with both hands. And I think if you drop a guy after doing what he's doing at the moment, you just about shatter him, I reckon.
Are they going to offer him a contract first?
Well, he's forcing them to offer him a contract, isn't he? When you think about it, I mean, he's now thumbing his nose at the fact that, you know, if you want to keep me in the twos for so long, and then you know, eventually weight of numbers was to suggest that he's got to get his opportunity. Well, he's grabbed it with both hands. He's got. To me, he looks like he's playing his football now with some self-belief. There was a comment that was made by Enzo before that I saw that suggested that he was playing with self-belief, and that's a big thing, particularly more so with the younger. You know, he's only young, and he's got the world in front of him now. You know what he does with that; it's entirely up to himself. And I'm sure that and I saw. Interestingly enough, after the game against Collingwood, there was a comment made by our skipper. I think the skipper's got a lot of belief in Paddy Dowd. To be honest with you, I think he's got high hopes for him. And you know, if you look at the way that they both play, in some respects, he does remind you of a young Patrick Cripps. In some respects, I'm not saying all, but in some respects. And he'll get better. Well,
the other thing, Brownie, is that, you know, we keep looking at him because he's got this baby face. We keep calling him a kid, and we keep thinking that he's this inexperienced young draftee. He's been in our system now for this is his 6th year. He's actually played 70 games of AFL football. Now, you don't play 70 games of AFL football if you haven't got some ability. And you know, I dare say he'll, you know, whether it's with us or whether he ends up having to go elsewhere, he will eventually get to 100 games, and that takes some doing.
Absolutely.
I'd love to see him stay. I think he's earned it. I think a lot of people would be rapt to see him retain his spot in the side. And I think the key thing is what you said, self-belief. He's now starting to play like a guy who actually believes that he does have some ability, and he's backing himself. And doing all the things that he has to do to retain his spot in the side.
Well, it's interesting because one of the comments in and around which I was going to make, and I don't know whether Joe's going to refer to me as in his question, but TDK, he's now.
It's on my list. What do you think about Rucks? Was my next question.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but I was going to draw the correlation between the two. TDK now is starting to believe in the fact that he's got ability not only to compete against the top line ruckman, but also being an attacking second and third effort ruckman. So that is something that is now starting to come into his game. So he's all of a sudden come from, you know, in and out of the side, drop because of form, and you know they can put as much spin doctor crap on it as he likes, but he didn't have bloody concussion when he got dropped earlier in the year. That was rubbish. That was just all cover up crap. But at the end of the day, he's signed a new contract, which means that it's given him. That shows to this kid that he wants to, or they want him to stay on in the club. So that's a bonus. So now we can start freeing the arms up and having a good old swing.
So what did you think of our rucks? Because I think yesterday they tended to play pit net centre bounces and then TDK around the grounds. I'm still not sold on Mark Pitnet. I'm sorry. I don't know. There's just something about him. I would have given him 4 years.
Hang on. There is one thing I've got to say. I thought the tactic yesterday, given the fact that Grundy hasn't been in great form himself, and they've been trying to make him out to be a forward. Now, whether they keep him or whether they don't, that's entirely up to Melbourne. But the reality is that Grundy was never going to be a weapon for them, particularly more so in and around the ruck duels. Now, I thought the setup of having Pitnet in the centre bounces, I thought that was a fairly bold move, but a clever move. And I thought then the agility of TDK around the ground, I thought, and more so in particular that third quarter, I thought he was the difference between the turning point of the game where it could have gone either way. And I thought TDK's work around the ground was admirable. In fact, on some of the occasions, not only did he actually take the ruck work, but he also was able to clear some of his work himself. I don't know whether you saw it or not, but he burst out of the centre a couple of times. Even in and around the ground contest, he was able to nullify what and I know you said before that Gawn got 47 tap outs and things like that. You can get as many tap outs as you referred to before, Vince, but if you're not effective with them, then, and we're clever enough to shark them. And that was something that we weren't doing earlier in the year. If you recall, I was really critical of our midfielders because we weren't sharking enough of the opposition ruckman. And look, the other thing is that they played him up forward and then ran him around the ground after the centre bounce had taken place. Well, if you don't watch him and he proved it, he can actually still hit the scoreboard as well, which is damaging.
Yeah,
so I just think that was a really good game from TDK yesterday. I was impressed.
Pete, what do you think about this Melbourne thing of having two number one ruckmans in the team? Do you think it's like having two bulls in the ring just doesn't work? Because it's obviously not working for them.
I think personally that Gawn is probably their premier ruckman, and Melbourne have been struggling with their forward line for some time, and if they hadn't have had the loss of Petty going into the contest yesterday, who knows, something might have been different where that was concerned. But I think that Grundy is struggling to come to terms with where he's supposed to be playing in that side.
Yeah, he looks confused.
I think Melbourne.
I don't think it's a good fit. I think Melbourne were trying to recruit someone who would probably be the logical successor to Gawn once Gawn gives it away. Because don't forget, Gawn's probably 30. What is he? 32 maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's too many years left for Max. Maybe a couple more, but
that's a lot of money to spend, Vince, for insurance.
Exactly, it is. No, I agree. And that's why I actually think that Grundy himself must be getting pretty frustrated with where his career's going. And apparently Port Adelaide's pretty interested in him because they're looking at life beyond Scott Lycett. And I think you might find that he'll go back home to Adelaide and play for Port Adelaide. I'd be surprised if that sort of a trade wasn't done. But anyway, that's their problem. I think it works better when you've got a more senior ruckman and a more junior ruckman who's coming through. And I think that even though you don't seem to be a fan of Pitnet, Joe, I think as a team we play better when he's in the first ruck, taking the lion's share of a lot of the bullocking work, especially at the centre bounce, and TDK is more free to move around the ground and be more of that mobile follower rather than a centre bounce ruckman. And when TDK is in the first ruck, I don't think we function as well. That's my personal observation. What do you reckon, Brownie?
I think what tends to happen here is that Grundy, if you recall, his breakout year was when he was actually playing as a ruck / follower /
midfielder. Yeah, he was even roving his own
ruck
ball.
rover, so to speak.
Correct,
pretty much
as a ruckman. So, and look, who knows? If Melbourne want to continue on with Grundy, then there could be an opportunity that they may even throw him into the middle as a ruck rover type, Jimmy Steins type person out of the midfield, rather than, because I mean, when he was playing at Collingwood and when he was in top form, his engine was really big. I mean, he was the lion's share of it. So don't discount Grundy just at present. I think there is still opportunity for Grundy. In fact, I'd welcome him at Carlton, to be honest with you.
Talking of that, sorry.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd play him as a bloody midfielder.
I reckon as he's aging, and he's 29 now, he'll be 30 in, I think it's April next year. I just see him slowing up in that respect. I don't think he's the type of player that's going to be like your typical ruckman that often matures and reaches his peak at 30. A lot of ruckmen reach their peak at around 30, 31, like Max Gawn. But Grundy seems to me to be a player that's, if anything, starting to go down the other way. I think he's going downhill.
All right.
Let's forget about. I think he needs to find Melbourne. A club that gives him an opportunity in the first ruck. But anyway, look, let's get back to Carlton. That's their problem. I don't know that I'd have him at Carlton, Brownie. I don't think it'll happen anyway. So,
but this raises a question that Peter just mentioned. He said he'd rather a senior ruckman and a junior ruckman, right?
No,
so if you're saying that,
no, I said that.
Oh well, if you're saying Mark Pitnet is the senior ruckman,
yeah,
and TDK's a junior ruckman,
yeah.
Where does JSOS fit into this going forward?
Maybe he doesn't. Well, I think JSOS was only ever used as a relief ruckman when these two guys were injured, or one of them at least was injured. And I don't think you can give players contracts based on being a relief ruckman. You've got to have another position on the ground that you are valued with. Now, whether that's for JSOS as a tall mobile forward, or whether they find him some other position. But at the moment, even if he was available, I struggle to see where he's going to be able to fit into that side.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Vince, my neighbour's got a question for you. Blue bagger in Vietnam. Where does
Guys
Pitto
agree with Vince, but where does Pitto go when he's not in the ruck? Well, I don't think he goes anywhere. I think he comes off the ground for a rest. That's what I think he does. He's either in the ruck or he's off the ground having a rest. Otherwise, he should be playing in the ruck. Everything he does should be first ruck. That's my view. I don't think he gets enough of the ball myself.
I don't think he does enough around the ground.
What did he have yesterday? I don't think he had that much. He had six possessions, two kicks and 4 hand passes, and laid 4 tackles. The 4 tackles were about the most valuable thing he did. But he only had 14 hitouts. I think TDK had 15 hitouts. So they're sharing the workload there. But I mean, they gave him a 4-year extension. He must be in their plans if they're going to give someone like Mark Pitnet a 4-year contract.
Yeah, but I think the thinking around that was that they thought that they were going to lose TDK, didn't they? So
possibly.
So I thought at that stage you'd think that Carlton were thinking in and around that. I would still use Pitnet in the 24 or 25 that's actually there. He's going to be in that top area. The discussion we're having in and around Jack Silvani, I said earlier on he could probably take the replace of Ed Curnow when Curnow moves on as a substitute. Use him as an impact player. He could be used as a mid forward, or
he'd be the ideal substitute because he can just about play anywhere. Brownie.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. The only thing that we haven't tried him in is a back line, obviously. But as a mid-sized forward and as a relief, you could use him in that sort of scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just a couple of people have asked a few questions about some umpiring decisions. We're not going to talk about it, but what did you think about Alex Chincotta tripping Jacob Van Rooyen? Free kick wasn't paid. Yeah, well, probably was there. I mean, and so what? It wasn't paid. Can't do anything about it. You can't go back and change history. I think we got some bad decisions too when I was looking at the.
I'm going to address the elephant in the room. What did you think? I'll ask you two guys for starters. What did you think of the final decision there in relation to Christian Petrarca's kick for goal? Was it touched? Wasn't it touched? Do you think they handled it right? Do you think that I heard someone express a view on this last night to me. Their opinion was that if there's no conclusive evidence that it's been touched, it should be paid a goal. That was his
Why?
view. He said if there's no conclusive evidence.
No, that's wrong.
No. He said if the umpire says, if the goal umpire says, I'm not sure, I think it might have been touched, rather than as far as I'm concerned, it was touched. I just want to see if it was over the line or not. Well, that's different. But if the umpire says he's not sure, what this person's saying is if it's not conclusive, he's saying it should be paid a goal.
But okay, I spoke about this at length at the hospital this morning with Rocco. I had an hour conversation with him. So the umpire doesn't say, I think it might be touched. If you listen to him, he says, I believe it was touched. I am seeking clarification. Have a listen. They never say, I think. And I don't know if they've been instructed by the AFL to do this because of the stump mics or the mics on them. They all say, I believe it was touched, but I would like clarification. Because I think earlier they used to go, no, I think it was touched, but I'm not sure, to avoid that situation. The guy is standing right next to the post, right? He's right next to the action. Of course, he can't go and ask the Carlton players. They're all going to say it was touched, and all the Melbourne players are going to say it wasn't touched, right?
Yeah.
So that guy is paid to do a job. Let him do the job. It also comes back with, this is a multi-billion-dollar game, not million, billion dollars, right? And have you seen the pissy cameras that they have and the angles?
Well, that's probably more the issue that ought to be addressed from an AFL perspective. They ought to be looking at the bloody. They have
terrible. These pissy $20 cameras that you can buy at JB Hi-Fi.
Matthew Lloyd made the point. Matthew Lloyd made the point on the Sunday Footy Show this morning that, you know, one day decisions like this will cost someone a premiership or a grand final or a major final, and it's unacceptable the standard of camera work that goes into. I mean, in soccer, for example, in competitions around the world, they've got goal line technology which is brilliant. It's to the finest, finely tuned measurement. I mean, cricket, you've seen Snicko and all of this sort of thing coming where they can actually measure if a ball has just touched the edge of a bat. Our technology is terrible. And, yeah, I agree. I think there's got to be better technology available, especially on goal lines like that. They should be able to have cameras that are permanently installed in the post or whatever the case may be. There's just not good enough to have this sort of a decision, with such rotten technology.
I think I agree with Joe. I think that, you know, what we tend to do is that we brought this technology in to take any doubt out of the mind of anybody that was actually at the game.
Probably creating more doubt than what it was beforehand.
Well, what's happening is that it's creating laziness from a goal umpire's perspective.
I agree with that too. Thanks for raising that, Brownie, because in my opinion, when they didn't have all of this rubbish technology, they actually made a decision. They knew that it was either a goal or it was touched, and they had to make a call, and whether it was right or wrong, they made a call. Now they seem to be not making any decisions at all and constantly going to the video referee. It's just laziness, and they get paid to do a job. They should do it.
Well,
interesting. And the point. Sorry, go Pete.
No, go on, Joe.
No. Well, I was going to say the point is that it wasn't called a goal and then overturned. It was if you look at the video footage, you actually can see it was touched. Right inside the line. So how can this bloke in the arc, and I can see it on a computer, he's going, oh well, look, the video replay is inconclusive. What do we put something on the ball? And I don't think
you can see it was. No, I'm sorry, I disagree with that. I don't think you can see it was touched at all. I think the vision is that grainy and fuzzy and not clear at all. It's so unclear that you can't categorically say it was touched or not touched at all.
Well, it went to the third umpire, and the third umpire, his decision on that was inconclusive, and it was umpire's call.
So therefore, umpire's call.
Right. So
exactly.
It's gone back down to the ground where the guy is standing there. He can see what's happening in the action. He can hear things that are happening in the action, et cetera, et cetera. And the point I was making before is very simply this. Whilst the technology was put in place to assist, it's now become reliant rather than people making the calls at the time when the game.
Yes.
Now, if you've got, say a dozen decisions that have got to go upstairs for review and stuff like that, and this is creating, I believe, instability within in the game itself, because you've got, say, a side that's on a run. They might be on a roll. They might be coming from behind. All of a sudden, there's a decision, and the decision is upstairs, and it takes 2 or 3, or might even be 30 or 40 seconds to make that decision. All of a sudden, the momentum drops. So it's almost like we've got a reset here because of that decision. Now, and in my mind, whilst if you're going to go with that sort of technology and go to that nth degree, then you don't need goal umpires. What you do need is that you need technology there to be able to whether it's over the line or whether it's not over the line. What's
and the last point I want to make is these Melbourne supporters are all screaming, "Oh, that cost us the game." What about the other 119 minutes? They didn't count. Yeah. If you should have won, why weren't you 2 goals or 3 goals?
It's always the way when it's in the last play that people look at just the last play or the last decision or the last umpire's call. Yeah,
it could have been reversed. It could have been Carlton who was bitching and whinging about the fact that it was touched on a lot. And
then we'd only have ourselves to blame because we didn't capitalise in the first quarter. Anyway, can't go back and change history.
No.
Kemp, what did you think of Kemp? I think he's getting better and better each week. I think we found someone here.
Took an absolute hanger of a mark in defence there at one stage.
I thought his first 2 quarters were exceptional. I thought he sort of lowered his colours a little bit in the third quarter, but then in the last quarter he hit back again. So he's now starting to become, and I did say it earlier in our podcast some weeks ago, that I believe that he's now starting to take some real leadership responsibility down there. He works very, very well with guys like Cincotta and also Newman back there. So I think they're starting to build something pretty special in terms of the back line. And that's not belittling Wiedering. I'm just saying that these guys have come in and our back line has straightened up. Compared to what it was earlier in the season, it was a shame.
I think he works a lot better with Wiedering than Lewis Young used to work with Wiedering. I don't think the two of them really gelled much. I get the feeling, and I hear things too, but that the Lewis Young Wiedering relationship wasn't that flash. So you can see on the field that Brody Kemp has just fitted in like a glove in that defence now. And I think, in fact, his success is probably now going to mean the end for guys like Lockie Plowman. I don't think we'll ever see him back in a Carlton jumper on the field in an AFL game. I think if he wants to play AFL football at senior level again, he's probably going to have to look for greener pastures somewhere else. But I think Brody Kemp's development's been excellent this year, and he was a first rounder for us about 4 or 5 years ago, and he's had a lot of injuries. So it's great to see him doing well. 19 possessions last night, 8 marks, and one of them was an absolute ripper. So I think he's exciting the fans, and he'll be a permanent fixture in that defence for many years to come if he can keep it going.
I think I agree with you, Vince. I think he's now, as I said before, his leadership qualities are starting to shine through, as is Newman's. And the guy that I would like to make mention of was Marchbank. Now, I was actually critical of him last week, and I didn't think he was up to it. There was a couple of times there yesterday that he started to show to me that he was probably capable of staying in the side, providing that he can stay on his trajectory and keep on improving. I mean, Fisher's game, for instance, yesterday, that wasn't as dominant as was the week before, However, he did still provide some valuable run out of the back line and was able to lay fairly crucial tackles at critical times of the game. Saad's game yesterday, it's interesting, isn't it? Saad's game now has changed slightly. I don't know whether you've noticed it or not, but now I know that he's a designated kicker, but he's also now starting to work on his defensive side of his game rather than, like he's being
rather than going for the big dashing runs and being all out attack. Yeah, he's now starting to bring some defensive intent into his play.
Correct. And that's the thing that came out of the game for me yesterday.
Well, he laid 5 tackles. That was a pretty good effort, I thought.
And
what about
go on.
Sorry, go. No, you go. Go, Pete. Sorry.
There was a couple of times of which he went back into packs and things like that yesterday, and there was critical spoils and things that he was able to achieve. So it's not that game where it's run and gun and give it to me, I'm going to bloody will be the wolf kicker and goodness knows what else. It's now starting to take that role of being more of a defensive role than anything else. Look, the one guy that I think has really, really improved out of sight, and he's had some big jobs this year, is Newman. He's not only taken on some of the more dangerous forwards in the competition, but he's also elevated his own game. Do you recall early in the season when he was beaten badly and he dropped the shoulders? He doesn't do that now. He's actually starting to fight on. Someone made mention of it before about, was it Chincotta that actually had that defensive second effort, which was to take ruin out of the or out of that contest. And I thought that was really impressive. That was actually showing that these guys understand what is required to be a top line backman going into a final series.
Yep. I just wanted to get you back on Marchbank. Oh, sorry, Joe.
I was going to say the 2 Swan boys have been good.
Yeah,
Hewitt and Hewitt. Yeah.
Hewitt was good yesterday. I thought Hewitt in the early part of the game, particularly more so in the first and second quarters, I thought his work around the ground was quite good. I think the third quarter was a little quieter, and then he came back into it in the last quarter. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, Vince, but that's the way I sort of saw his game. In that third quarter, it was interesting, wasn't it? That was the quarter that Doherty stood up and he had quite a bit of influence in it until he got injured, obviously, and he got the corky. But some of the work he did in that third quarter before he got injured, I thought was quite good.
Well, rather than taking up time now, talking about both Hewitt and Newman, because I'll talk about them more later because they were both in my 3-2-1 votes. So, I thought Hewitt was our best player yesterday. He was incredibly effective, and I'll give you some reasons for that a little bit later on when we talk about the votes.
Sure.
But I just wanted to take you back to Marchbank. I did say last week that, yes, he will be rusty for a couple of games. I think against Collingwood he came back. It was a big call to bring him back against Collingwood. It was such a big game. He did reasonably well there. He was a bit average last week against St Kilda, but he was a lot better last night against Melbourne. And I think you'll find that the hierarchy at the club really do rate him, and that's one of the reasons why they've persisted with him despite his injury concerns over the last few years. Cunningham's in the same boat. They've persisted with him as well. And now we're starting to reap the rewards a little bit for our patience with these two guys. And if they are fully fit and in form, you'll see why the club has persisted with both of them. And in the case of Marchbank, he is a class player. And you'll see as he hits form going into the finals how valuable he'll be. I'm very confident about that. And in fact, I think you'll find that he's played 48 games now, even though he's been on our list for something like 7 or 8 years, and he was on GWS's list before that. So he's really struggled to string games together because of injury. But I think you'll find that next week will be his 49th against Gold Coast. And then guess what? Against his old side, GWS, he'll play his 50th AFL game. That'll be a really good achievement for him. It's taken a long time to get to 50 AFL games, at least for Carlton anyway.
Well, I think this is probably...
I think it's 50 games for Carlton it'll be.
One of the things that is good about this podcast and about, having an opinion, it's like arseholes, everyone's got one, but the result is that we can have our viewers making comment, they can have a crack at me, they can have a crack at you, and we're in this, we're purely and simply, if Carlton are able to have some success on the back of the fact that we were criticising them earlier in the year because of X, Y, Z, and then they can come back and Patrick Coops can make me eat my words and other people can start to make me eat my words. I'm the happiest man in the world. I didn't come onto this podcast to be a shock jock or anything like that. I came on here to share what my thoughts were in relation to how players and the criticisms that I have levelled at certain players is purely and simply because they weren't up to it at the time. Now that they're starting to show a bit of form and there's some competitive tension in amongst the side, and there's obviously a building of self-belief and confidence within the thing, well, then that's fantastic. Then my job's done. If we're in a situation where we're sitting here next week and we're going, well, that was bloody horrible, what happened there? Did they get ahead of themselves? I don't know. Now, sorry, Joe.
Look, anyone who was – look, if we turn the clock back 2 months ago, right, to the day, it was the Essendon Carlton game at the MCG that we lost to the Bombers, where we'd only laid 33 tackles for the game and looked pretty average for most of the night. I think they basically put the game beyond doubt with a 15-minute burst in the third quarter. But that was our eighth loss from the previous 9 matches. Now, anyone who thought that, we're on the brink of putting 8 wins in a row after that and finishing in the top 5 on the ladder would have been on drugs, honestly, because we had been so ordinary and so poor for 2 months since the Adelaide game in the middle of April that, no wonder Carlton was over 100-1 to win the premiership then. Now we're into 6-1. So, it just goes to show you that something flicked the switch. We're not sure what it was or what specifically has turned this around, but it's clearly player-driven. I think it's not because the coach has said anything different. I think the coach has been very consistent all the way through, and I give him credit for that. He stuck to his message. He never wavered right through the bad patch. And now that we've come into a really good patch, I don't think his message to the players is any different than what it was beforehand. It's just that they're executing it a lot better now. And they're actually developed some self-belief and some confidence in the way they play, and they're more daring and they're prepared to make mistakes. Whereas beforehand, they were playing safe and they were kicking it down the line all the time rather than using the corridor, and they were just, so predictable and so slow with their ball movement. And now all of a sudden they're daring and exciting, and watching Carlton games, you can't help but be glued to the television if you're watching it on TV.
I call it the 1%ers that actually win games. And yesterday I was just going to make a quick comment before Joe, and he's probably got some other questions there. But
keep going.
One of the things that did stick in my mind yesterday was Jack Martin. Now, Jack Martin's didn't have a massive influence on the scoreboard, but there were a couple of times that were very, very important possessions or tackles or knock-ons or blocks or something like that I thought showed maturity in and around the contest. So I just, and whilst he didn't have a massive influence on the game, I thought some of his unrecognisable work was very important in the game, and he's really, really important to our forward line, particularly going into a final series. Now, if he can keep himself fit and agile, he's going to be a real X factor for mine going into that campaign.
Yeah, my word.
Okay, people have been asking me. So here it goes. The last 2 minutes, discuss. I don't know what there is to discuss. I thought we held out pretty well. We tended to blaze away, I thought, a bit. I think they got a little bit worried. We gave away those two.
I think we can play.
kicks.
I think we can do it a little bit better in future.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Joe. We
panicked.
Look, we kicked our 9th goal. I think before half the quarter was over. So the
That's right.
last half of the quarter, we did not score, and
Yeah,
Melbourne
13
came
minute
back
mark.
hard.
Yeah,
They
13
never
minute
gave
mark.
in. Yeah,
13-minute mark, Vince. It was when we kicked our last goal, and then it was more like interesting comment there from Blue Bagger. We held on for dear life, and look, holding on for dear life's okay, providing that you're still getting possessions of the ball. It's when you're not having possession of the ball and they're starting to open you up a bit, that's when it becomes a little bit of a problem. To the credit of the back line, they actually did hold firm. And if you recall, one of the critical times there was a ball kicked in. Akers had worked really hard to get back and took a mark it was in between the point post and the goal post.
Yeah.
There. So he actually did work really hard to get back there to actually take the ball. So one of the things that's interesting in this sort of thing, and I've been involved with this in 79. In that last quarter, whilst we was able to score that goal that Kenny Sheldon was able to run in and score after Harmsy knocked it in from, I think, the 6th row back in the
ball was in. ABC cameras show it.
I thought that we as a side, it was probably more hope than belief that we could win the game, and we were just trying to attack every possible possession that we could get to shut it down. And in that last 5 or 6 minutes of that game, it was just a good old-fashioned hard slog. Now, yesterday or last night was a very similar situation. It was a good old-fashioned hard slog that actually got us across the line. And I think you're right. I think there was a couple of times there where we blazed away just purely and simply trying to clear the area rather than try and actually retain possession. And it could have gone either way in that last couple of minutes. But to their credit, they held on. When you're under pressure like that, it only takes a split second, a bad decision, and the game can be turned on its ear. As it was, we didn't. We were smart enough to actually still be able to retain when we needed to, and still be able to work hard to get back and assist. And that was something that we weren't doing earlier in the year.
Okay. Thankfully, I'm not sure who it was that just put up that comment. Thankfully, we got off to a really good start in that last quarter, kicking 3 goals pretty quickly, and I was Blue Bagger. And, that gave us the biggest lead in the game, when it was 9-6. And I think that's what helped is that, we already put those scores on the board and they had to play catch-up football.
Scoreboard pressure.
I was listening to the game. Sorry, Pete.
Yeah, I was just going to say I was actually talking about this some weeks ago about scoreboard pressure and how much of an influence that has on the outcome of a game.
Yeah.
But we've all seen it in modern day football, and I'm not suggesting it was back when I was, kicking around, but in modern day football, scoreboard pressure is only as good as what you can maintain. It's not as good as what you think it is if you have got 3 or 4 goals up, because in the blink of an eye, it can change. We've all seen it.
I was just about to say, yesterday, because I was at the hospital with my girlfriend, when the game was on, I was listening to a radio call, and I think it was Football Nation, and they had Mark McClure, as the special comments. He's saying exactly the same. When we were 3 goals up in the last quarter, he said, now Carlton don't want to relax. He goes, when you got your foot on their throat, you need to really press hard, not give them the chance to breathe. He was quite funny. He's so funny listening, Mark McClure. Oh, that was a free kick. Oh, where was that 50-metre penalty?
Well, Sellers is quite a colourful character, as we all are aware. And Sellers and myself used to play in unison a little bit when we were playing back in the late 70s and that era there. Now, Mark is somebody that's got a really strong opinion about certain things about Carlton, as I have, and I respect his views. But at the end of the day, it all gets back to how much you want to actually will yourself to a contest, particularly in a very tight situation, and whether you're prepared to do that and whether you're not prepared to do it. And as I said earlier on, in those instances, it's the little 1%ers which actually can create more opportunities than what you think. So it's how bad you want it in that last area.
Exactly.
Before we go to votes, Joe,
we need to talk about. Hey?
Yeah, I was just going to say, before we go to votes, can I just ask both of you, in relation to players that are currently out of the team that you would look forward to bringing back into the team? Now, the ones that are out at the moment, the only ones that I reckon would be almost automatic selection because they're in your best 23 would be Walsh, Chera, McGovern, and Mackay. Now, I think you'll find that's how our selection committee will look at it. Kennedy, I don't think is an automatic bring in, especially considering the way Dow's going. And I'm not sure that Silvani's an automatic selection.
No.
And Jordan Boyd.
And Jordan Boyd was, available for the game last night, but he actually played in the VFL side today, which had also an 8-point victory, another narrow victory over the Demons at Icon Park. So who would you bring in if everyone was available, and who out of the current side would you leave out? And do you think is in a precarious position in terms of their position in the team at the moment? Is it a Chincotta? Is it a Fogarty or any other players that you think might be questionable as to whether they'll retain their spots in the side? Let's just say you're the chairman of selectors and it's up to you. What would you decide, Brownie?
Curnow for a starter, Ed, I'm talking about. I'd say.
Well, he was the sub the last couple of weeks.
Correct. And I would suspect, and had very little influence on the game yesterday. He
in fact played the VFL today because he only played a short time in the game last night, so he qualifies to play the VFL, and he played today in the VFL.
Yep. I thought Cottrell yesterday wasn't all that great, or last night. I thought he was quiet.
But would you drop him on one poor game, or if Walsh? Now we let's just say it's now first week of the finals. Okay.
Yep.
First week of the finals. We're in the finals. We're playing an elimination final, and everyone's available. Who are you gonna leave out of yesterday's side, and who are you going to bring in?
Well, that's an interesting question. The first response to that would be, I would suspect that Motlop might be under a question mark because he didn't really have a great influence in the game yesterday.
Yeah, no, he had a very quiet game, in fact, Motlop last night.
Yep. I'm not sure about Sam Doherty and how bad that injury is to his thigh.
Again, let's assume that Doherty comes back within 2 weeks anyway, and he's just got a corky. So let's just say he's available.
Well, if he's available, I would pick Doherty.
By the way, Motlop had 3 kicks, 3 hand passes, 3 marks, 3 tackles, and did not hit the scoreboard.
Yeah, no, not good enough. You can't carry passengers in an elimination final when you've got your best side available at the time. So automatically, you've got to be looking at Curnow gone. You've got to be looking at Motlop gone. Question mark over Cottrell.
That's 3.
And Doherty. So I would definitely Walsh would be my first choice. Chera and Walsh, I should say.
Yes.
I'd rate them both about the same. So you'd have to say them. And McGovern, I've still got a big question mark over. I still think that McGovern is still not in our best 25. And
really,
I think that now that we've got guys like Kemp, Wiedering's back into some sort of form. Newman's playing well in the back line. And Marchbank, if he starts to show some form, I think that they would be better prospects than what McGovern would be. And Mackay, I've got a real question mark over whether that's going to straighten us up or in fact confuse us going into that sort of situation. I did pose the question to you two guys a couple of weeks ago, are we a better forward line without Mackay or are we a better forward line with him? And just at present, I mean, wins against Collingwood, wins against Melbourne, although be it over
St.
the
Kilda.
line. St. Kilda. I would suspect that just at present we're not as conscious of the fact that he's in the side, so we're not actually looking for that. We're actually,
and he also went off pretty early in the Port Adelaide game. So therefore, we've won 4 games against top 6 sides without Harry Mackay basically on the field at all, or even if he was on the field for a small part of the game, he really didn't have any impact.
We're now in a situation where we're starting to lower our eyes and have a look at other opportunities going into the forward 50. And you can see that they're starting to build a bit of belief with the forward line. So now that and this is where we were screaming out earlier in the season about the fact that our midfielders and our small forwards aren't producing enough quality to be able to kick. Now, he kicked 2 yesterday, and he was instrumental in certain areas. The one that stuck out in my mind was the one where Curnow took a mark between centre and centre half forward. He wheeled around, and he was out the back of the pack, and he took or run on and taken the mark. So I think Owi's now starting to understand what that looks like. One of the interesting things is that we've improved out of sight with our pack work. And I'm talking about where the fall of the ball, where we are. I don't know whether you notice or not, but Luke Bruce for Hawthorn is an absolute master at being able to get at the front of the pack and actually be able to read a drop of a ball. And
front and centre, they call it.
Yep, and I think we're getting better at it. But the other thing that we weren't doing earlier in the year was that we weren't running at it at speed and pace and hitting the pack at pace. We're now actually doing that quite a bit. So, question mark over Mackay. I'd definitely take Walsh and Chera purely and simply because of their early form. And,
so you've got the question over the 2 Macs, as in Mackay and McGovern, whereas you'd bring Walsh in and Chera in immediately. Anyone else that you'd bring in? Would you bring in Silvani? Would you bring in Kennedy, for example? Or maybe even a Jordan Boyd? I think I saw Brian McMahon make the comment about maybe Jordan Boyd in defence. And by the way, good evening to you, Brian. Great man, Brian McMahon.
Okay.
The Vince Cheerio segment. There we go. More Cheerios.
He's been a great Carlton man for many, many years. In fact, instrumental in bringing over Peter Bosustow from Perth back in 1981. So there you go.
The buzz.
Yep.
And look, the other thing that you'd have to take into account also, Vince, is who you're playing, right? So, you could say that theoretically you could bring this person in and that person in, but realistically, if you're requiring a bigger forward or a bigger backman, or you're requiring a second.
So those players you're saying that I brought up, like the Silvanis and the Kennedys, etc., and Jordan Boyd, you would maybe select those depending on who we're playing and what their strengths were, and look at the opposition before you made an immediate decision on those. Whereas Chera and Walsh, they are automatically in, doesn't matter who we're playing.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, right.
Absolutely.
What about you, Joe? What do you
Silvani?
think? Who would you bring in, Joe?
I'd bring in Peter Brown, Vince Lochisano, and myself. Right? I was asking you for your opinion, like you're a valued member of this trio. Come on, give us some respect. Okay, so obviously Walsh and Chera are definites, right? You can't not. I'm a bit on the fence with Marchbank. not Marchbank, sorry, with McGovern. He's
McGovern.
either really good or really bad. You don't get the average with him.
So would you retain Marchbank in defence ahead of McGovern?
At the moment, yes. At the moment, unless Marchbank got injured.
What about Chincotta? Does he maybe lose his spot in defence to someone like McGovern?
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay.
I actually agree with Joe. I think Chincotta is. I think he's earned the right to have the opportunity.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I'm just simply posing the question and asking you.
I would probably get rid of Cottrell.
Really,
Ed Curnow is going to get dropped, but he's a sub, and people are going to hate me. But I think probably Lachlan Fogarty or Cunningham. Not that. What about
Paddy Dow? Does Paddy Dow retain his spot in the side, seeing Chera and Walsh are coming back in?
Absolutely.
He does, absolutely. But I think they're going to play him as a substitute, maybe with impact.
What about Kennedy? Do you bring him in place of Paddy Dow?
I don't think Kennedy. No,
so he's got to come back by the VFL, Kennedy.
It's not even that. I think he doesn't have pace. We've already got a lack of pace in the midfield, so we don't need another slower person in there. Like Hewitt's not quick, you know.
I've got a different view on that, Joe. What I would do is I'd actually play Cripps forward and allow Chera, Walsh and Dow to go to work in the midfield.
Cripps is a shit kick for goal. That's my problem. I agree with you because he's 6'4", 6'5".
Really? Do you really think he's that bad? I don't think he's a bad shot.
Yeah, he's terrible. He's terrible.
Nah. A set shot? No.
Yes.
No.
Terrible.
I think his kicking's a lot more ordinary when he's trying to kick under pressure. No. But I don't think he's a terrible kick for goal on the set shot.
Terrible.
No, what it does create, though, Joe, is that creates a really, really good backman to keep him quiet.
Well, this is another thing, Peter. I was going to ask you this. I think you'll find that the argument against leaving Mackay out will be that, hey, if anything, he will take a very, very good defender away from Charlie. And if you're not careful, they can double and triple team Charlie if he's operating on his own. And that our forward line is still a better forward line if you've got Mackay up there, even if he's playing a high centre-half forward, even going up to the wing and getting kicks there and taking contested marks and then wheeling around and kicking the ball in towards Charlie. And they can operate separately.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that's been a bit of hit and miss so far this year, and that is the fact that, you know, on the odd occasion when it has actually worked, it's looked absolutely brilliant. But when it's bloody well hasn't worked, it's looked horrible. And and yesterday there was the congestion in and around our forward line, particularly early when we were hitting it hard, wasn't helping us one little bit. Now, someone like Mackay would only that, and given the fact that our inside 50 tackling has been really tenacious, I think that you know you're looking at mid to smalls rather than having tools and slower out of the forward line. And one of the things that, you know, even Charlie himself, he's not that crash hot at defending, particularly if someone's running off.
Well, do you know, out of all of our players last night, just to back up your last comment just there, Charlie Curnow was the only player. Was it Charlie? I think he was the only player not to lay a tackle in the entire 23. Even his brother came on and laid 3 tackles in the league.
He doesn't need to lay tackles. He just needs to kick goals.
I'm just backing up Brownie's comment that he doesn't necessarily do the defensive things. That's all.
The defensive side of his game is not brilliant. And you know, whilst he can attack the ball and be instrumental in scoring or at least creating opportunities, his defensive work isn't all that flash. And Mackay's no different. Mackay's defensive work, although he has tried to work on it a little bit better than what he had been, isn't all all that flash. And I find, defenders, particularly guys like May and Lever and these types of guys that are that sort of attacking defender, they continually run off these guys rather than be in a situation where the guy can actually defend. So I as I said, question mark over it. And to your point, like Joe, Walsh and Shearer straight in, the others question mark.
I would bring in Walsh and Shearer just to give you my two bobs worth. I would bring in Walsh and Shearer as well.
Worth, Vince.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, then I won't tell you.
No, I'm interested actually.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, you're the only one, Pete.
That. Yeah, Joe's not interested in my opinion. I think we're a better forward line with Mackay in it, and I think we're a better defence with McGovern in it. That's my view. Now, that's not to say that others couldn't make a case for retaining their spots, but when it comes down to the crunch of finals, I think that they would probably leave Kemp in the defence, and they would probably leave I'd probably bring McGovern in. This is what I think the selectors will do. This is what I'm trying to say. And I think that maybe a Chincotta, if he's holding his spot in the side, will be on an interchange bench rather than a permanent halfback flanker. I think McGovern will probably get back into that side in defence. I'd be very surprised if he didn't. And it might depend on who we're playing. It might depend on, whether they have got tall forwards or not. Maybe they'll bring in someone like Jordan Boyd if there's a dangerous small forward to do the job on. But I was interested last night that who was it that played on Cozzy Pickett?
I thought Newman was on him at some stage, and
I think they rotated a couple on him.
Yeah, I thought that Marchbank went to him. I thought.
Did you notice, Joe? No. Maybe our viewers can tell us who was playing predominantly on Cozzy Pickett last night, but I thought that they might have brought in Jordan Boyd just for that very role. So they might do that as well. But look, I don't know that Silvani's going to be able to, and I'm not sure how far away he is with that knee injury. He still might be a few weeks off yet. But I can't see him necessarily getting straight back into the side. And Kennedy, you could argue the point on Kennedy. He's a great overhead mark. I'll tell you one thing about Kennedy. He's a beautiful kick and a beautiful mark. So he does add a few other strings to his bow that Paddy Dow doesn't have. But, it'll be interesting to see whether they bring Kennedy in place of Dow or whether they persist with Dow while he's in such a rich vein of form at the moment. So, but yes, I tend to agree with you too that the only guaranteed spots would be Shearer and Walsh.
Well, all right. All we can say out of that, Vince, is thank God we're not a selector.
Well, it's a nice problem to have. And one other point I was going to make, Brownie, is here we are discussing all of these other options of players coming back into the side. We won last night against a bona fide top four side who's been right up in that top four for 3 or 4 years now, including a premiership. And we did it without Walsh, without Shearer, without McGovern, without Harry Mackay, and without Kennedy, and without Silvani, and without Boyd, and all of these players. Then I tell you what, it's a nice problem to have if you're a selector, but also it's also nice that the VFL team continues to play as well, because if your VFL team wasn't going to be playing finals, and it looks like ours will be, you don't have that same pressure on spots in the side, do you? But while they're continuing to play and the VFL team continues to win, and these players are all playing for their opportunity to get back into the senior side, I think that's all very healthy, don't you?
So, totally agree. Brownie?
Well, I think that the competitive tension between all of the players for spots in the side now is really healthy. And the other thing that's interesting is that each side that's selected is going to be selected on, firstly, their form, and secondly, whether they're fit and healthy. So it's no longer masking players with jabs and goodness knows what else. When people are in bad situations, regardless of whether they're carrying something or whatever, we've now got the ability to be able to make those changes and be able to cover those losses that are there. And as good as Doherty's been, if he doesn't come up for training, then don't put him in the side.
Don't put him in.
I think you'll find that they'll rest him for the next week at least, and maybe the following one, and bring him back for finals. And I really do believe that even if, of course we don't want to lose games going into the finals, but even if we were to lose one or both of the next two games, I still believe that we've won enough games now to play finals. 50 points should get us in.
I don't think we'll lose both. We may lose
one.
I
think we'll win them both, personally. But anyway.
Well, I've got some comments around that, so I'll share them.
Does anyone know how the VFL side went this week and who played well? Well, Sean, I can report to you very happily that the VFL side got up against the higher-placed Casey Demons at Icon Park this afternoon. I'm pretty sure the score was something like 11-11, 77 to 9 goals, 15-69 or something like that. Anyway, I think it might have been something like that. So I think they got up by 8 points. And a lot of our senior players...
Yeah, 11-11 to 9-15.
Yeah, 9-15, 69.
I'm having a look.
So I think you'll find that a lot of the players that are, contending for spots in the seniors would have played pretty well today. I think...
I'll tell you who played well, Vince.
Okay, go for it.
Jackson Binns.
Yes.
26
He's been pushing for his first game all year, really, hasn't he?
Jordan
I've got a funny
Boyd,
feeling that they're just not going to play Jackson Binns this year. I don't know why, but...
Jordan Boyd played well.
Yeah.
Sam
I
Durden
know that Boyd played well. Yep.
Let's not lose sight of this, guys. While you're doing that, Joe, let's not lose sight of this. You're only 2 or 3 injuries away from upsetting the apple cart. So, realistically, you've got to keep that in perspective. So, we've had Walsh and Chera out, which have been, stalwarts all year, which is congratulations on them. So, the problem we've got is having too many players in good form. Terrific. Excellent.
It's a good problem to have.
I think you'll find that the top 6 possession winners on the ground are the only ones that would have been considered in the best players, really. You're talking Jackson Binns, number 32, who had 26 disposals. Jordan Boyd, number 37, who also had 26. Jack Carroll, he's another interesting young player, 24 possessions. No one's really talking about him as a potential, inclusion, but he has played senior football before. Lewis Young has obviously fallen out of favour in terms of our defence. He's often played as a relief ruckman as well, apart from Jack Silvani. He had 22 possessions today. Lockie O'Brien, 21 possessions. I just can't see Lockie O'Brien breaking into this side. No, and Lockie Cowan, the first year player from Tasmania, number 26, he had 20. And then all of a sudden you're down to Sam Durden, who got 17. I'm talking about the Carlton senior listed players here. And Lockie Plowman had 14. Sam Philp in his first game back for many, many weeks after a bad knee injury, 13 possessions. Ed Curnow only got 12. Josh Honey only got 11 and kicked 1 goal. Harrison O'Keefe, the ruckman, 10 possessions and 29 hitouts. Harry Lemmy only had 9. And Dominic Aquay, whose best attribute is the number on his back, number 41. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you, Brownie? He only had 8 possessions. So they were the Carlton listed players who played today. And really the only ones really putting their hand up for a gig there would be Jackson Binns, Jordan Boyd, Jack Carroll, and maybe a Lewis Young with 22. But really that's about it. Other than that, you're talking about injured players that are coming back.
Yep.
So I don't see too many changes going into the Gold Coast game, other than maybe if they're going to rest Sam Doherty, they might give Jordan Boyd another go back in the seniors.
Yep.
One defender for another.
Yep.
Okay. Let's get to the votes. Let me get here, and I'll put it up. Peter.
Yes.
Interesting. All of us went for a different player as best on ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I was conflicted here a little bit. I had Newman high, but then the last quarter of Cripps yesterday sealed it for me, and that was his leadership when things really got tough. He was the one that was directing traffic. There was a comment earlier in one of our viewers that said, as I said before, ha, 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 what do you think about Cripps now, Brownie? You're an idiot. So he's making me eat my words, so I'm the happiest man in the world when it comes to that, because, you know, having leadership going into a final series is one of the most important things that you can have on the ground. So
my word.
Three votes for Cripsy. I thought his work was really good yesterday. His leadership was outstanding. Newman has had an outstanding year, actually. He's been very consistent. As I indicated earlier in my comments, Newman's work rate has improved out of sight, and he's not dropping the shoulders like he was. He's not beaten badly like he is on occasions now. I think he's actually working really hard. And then Hewitt's, if I had to be really critical, I thought his third quarter dropped away a little bit, whereas his last quarter he started to fight back. So Hewitt was really important early in the game when things tightened up a little bit. I thought his work around the ground was pretty good. So Cripps 3, Newman 2, and Hewitt 1.
Vince?
Oh, sorry. A special mention to young Paddy Dowd. I was conflicted there a little bit, and I thought I was in two minds as to whether I threw him in for the one vote or not. But special mention to Dowd. I thought his work yesterday was good.
Okay. Vince?
Well, I, unlike Brownie, went for George Hewitt. I thought he had a magnificent game. He had 33 possessions in the end, a nice even spread between kicks and handballs, which I always look at. He laid 6 tackles and, had 3 score involvements, 8 clearances. And that's where I think we said that, we nullified Max Gawn's dominance in the ruck, and he was a large reason for that. He put the ball inside 50 on 4 occasions and also rebounded it out of 50 on 2 occasions. So I thought he had a really good game and a welcome return to form. And look, the big question here was going to be last week and this week, without Chera, without Walsh, without Kennedy, could our midfield stand up? And he's been a big reason over the last 2 weeks why we have stood up. I guess we come to expect it from Cripps, but Hewitt as well has really stepped up when he needed to. And I think the extra responsibility is exactly what he was looking for. And he got my 3 votes for the game. I thought he was the most influential player on the ground. Marginally ahead of our captain, Patrick Cripps, who, again, what can you say? He's just a marvellous player. And as you said, Brownie is really showing some leadership qualities more than ever before. 29 possessions, 9 tackles, more than any other player on the ground. And he also kicked a goal, which was important too. So I gave him my 2 votes. And Newman, well, again, just prolific. He had 27 kicks, which was something like 8 more than any other player on the ground. I think might have been Adam Sard who got 19, is in second position, but 27 kicks. He really does know how to use the ball by foot in his 33 disposals, and also took 9 marks and laid 4 tackles. So brilliant game also by Nick Newman. You could have rotated the 3 of them, in my view. You could have made the case why even Newman should have got 3 or Cripps should have got 3. But I went with Hewitt from Cripps and Newman.
Okay, and I thought Nick Newman was definitely the best person on the ground, closely followed by Hewitt. And I thought Akers played well. I think he's been a good pickup. I give a special mention to Cripps, Paddy Dow, and TDK. Our leaderboard. The only real movement was Nick Newman, who's coming home with a wet sail.
Solidified his position in the top 5, you'd think.
Yeah.
Cripps has come up to 6 now.
Yeah. And George Hewitt's gone
Hewitt.
to 8.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But Cheris,
and as you keep telling us in recent weeks, Joe, 4 out of those top 10 players are not even playing at the moment. In Chera, Walsh, Mackay, and Silvani.
Yeah, and maybe next week even Doherty. So
maybe.
So there you go.
But
someone put
we're still
up
winning.
something.
We're still winning games without a lot of our best players in the side, which is a great
Buck
sign.
David Buck put this up. 16 of the 23 who played yesterday have all played in the VFL yesterday, which is fantastic.
It's a very good point. I think we've used the VFL quite effectively this year. In fact, I saw an article from, I think it was John Ralph, it might have been in the Herald Sun or something like that, where he mentioned that, Michael Voss has used the VFL to great effect, especially when bringing players back from injury or if they've suffered some form loss. And this is more in recent weeks. I think you and I, Brownie, were saying how, we're not dropping players enough when we were losing. Mm-hmm. And eventually the Motlops did get dropped and the Zach Fishers did get dropped and they did go back and do their penance, if you like. And now they've come back bigger and better players for it. So
TDK came back through it.
TDK was another one who played some VFL. And it's a very good point. Thanks for mentioning it, David, that 16 out of our 23 have played VFL at some stage this year. So very good point.
Anyway. And the other thing is too, don't forget we're going into a campaign here, guys, where players now have got the 30, 40, 50 games under their belt, which means that they've got experience. Yes, none in the finals campaign, but it is still experience in games so that they can actually use that experience.
Yep.
Okay, and now it is time for...
Beautiful kick from Brown. That's a magnificent kick. Look at that. He was inside the centre square when he kicked that for a goal.
And that was Brownie's version of an around-the-corner kick.
Except
that's the traditional right-to-left kick for a right footer, not the way they do it these days with all these banana kicks and check-side things and whatever.
No, I think we'll have to add to your repertoire star of the club as well.
You'll have to play us that clip again, Joe. You'll have to find it again. Come on.
I've got to find it. Anyway, Pete, your Brownie points went to Vince, drum roll.
Yeah, the big fella yesterday. He was my standout for my Brownie points. His work in the third quarter was particularly impressive. As I explained earlier in the podcast, he's not only his ruck work, but he's also his clearance work out of the middle was really important on a couple of occasions. In fact, there's nothing more outstanding than seeing a big blonde bloke grab a ball and bloody well kick left foot out of a middle contest when all else around him disappeared. So
you must be thinking back to the days of big Carl Dittrich for St Kilda, Brownie.
Well, no. I was more thinking about Peter Moore, to be honest with you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, yeah, he was outstanding at stuff like that. However, I thought that TDK's game yesterday was really admirable. I was tossed up between him and Paddy Dowd. In the end, I gave it to the big fella purely and simply because he did hit the scoreboard on a crucial time of the game, and his work rate seemed to get better and better and better. And to his credit, I mean, he used his brain a couple of times yesterday where, he could have just stood there and let the ball just run free, but he didn't. He grabbed it and had a crack himself. So I thought that was really, really important, and he's getting better and better. He's a lot more settled now that his buddy will signed his contract, and he's going to be really important for the Carlton Football Club moving forward.
Yeah. There you go.
Joe, would you mind putting up those stats for TDK again just for 1 sec? Because I've got some stats on him here that I thought was interesting. Okay, what have we got there? Tackles, he only got one. He kicked 1 goal. Yeah, look, he also had 4 clearances. Did you know about that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
and two inside 50s and 1 rebound 50. So
yeah.
About the only negative I can find here, Brownie, was that he had 8 clangers and his disposal efficiency was under 50%. So he's got to watch where his disposals are going and whether they're hitting targets or not. So
I think you'll find
some of his kicks are a bit rushed and out of the pack.
Yeah, but I think you'll find that a couple of those situations were actually when he'd actually gone for a ruck duel, and whilst everyone was around him, he was able to clear out of the area. So,
and that's why statistics don't always tell the story, do they?
Yeah, no, that's
someone
correct.
mentioned earlier, stop focusing on statistics but anyway, the youth of today.
Well, anyway, I just saw that and I thought, well, it was worth mentioning his inside 50 work and his clearance work. So he's actually roving a lot to his own ball and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that's something that he wasn't doing earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And obviously he's got his tail up and he's now enjoying a nice little patch here going into an important part of the season. So he's now starting to show what his abilities are worth. And
exactly.
You can go back through our podcast, but I was really, really strong on the fact that we should keep him as
you've always said that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Even when he was having a rough patch, you said we should be keeping him, put another good preseason into him, and show a bit of faith in him. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
All right, next week.
Yes. Now this is interesting because I was commenting with Joe prior to you coming on, Vince. One of the things that's really, really dangerous here is when you come off a win such as against Melbourne, and as it is, we've been fighting for a position in that top 8. Now, we're not satisfied yet. Yes, whilst we're in there, it's still going to be determined on what happens and where you finish in that area.
Of course.
On how that moves forward. So the big danger here for the Carlton Football Club is they go into this game thinking that it's one in the bag. Now, Suns have been reasonably competitive since they've changed coaches in terms of bringing King in. He's changed their plan a little bit, and it's starting to show that they're starting to free up a little bit with what they've been doing with some of their work. So, whilst people might see this as one in the bag, I see this as a little bit of a danger game. It's that euphoric up and the big drop down after that sort of win. So they really have to consider going into this game. They have to focus and they have to be in a situation where they select a side that is capable of winning this game. So I see it as a danger game. I see it as an opportunity for players such as Dowd and these guys to really start to step up even that little further again so that it does cement their opportunity going into the forward. Having said that, I'm actually going to select Carlton to win it, but not in a canter that they think that they might win it in, and I'm going to put it in at about 15 points. I had about 9 to 12 last week, and I was wrong. I think Carlton's still got the opportunity to win this, and the Suns are a really, really odd side. They're capable of doing really spectacular things, but they're also capable of doing stupid things. And I just think that Carlton have got to play their game and not get sucked into their game.
Now, Vince, you wanted me to go first because I'm leading the tipping comp, and I will then say I totally disagree with Peter. Not who's going to win. I say Carlton are going to win this by 10 goals, right?
Same 10 goals that we beat them by at the MCG back in June when we finally started to win again. It was our first win out of the last 8 matches.
You heard it here first. Charlie will kick 6.
Okay.
Right? So 60 points. I think they've got nothing really to play for. I don't really give them a chance of making the 8. I think they might. Some of their players, Pete, you've probably played in teams where, you're not playing for the premiership, you're not playing for finals. I think some of them may drop their heads, or the effort may not be there.
They can't make the 8 now. They can't make the 8. Impossible.
Well,
no,
I don't know if it's impossible, but
no, it is impossible because, for starters, the Western Bulldogs are currently in 8th position on 44 points, and the Suns are on 36. But underneath the Bulldogs is Essendon and GWS, and they play each other next week. So one of those is going to get up to at least 48.
Well, there you go.
So they cannot make the finals, the Suns. They cannot make it.
Got nothing to play for. In fact, I might even go 15 goals then. But no, we will win this easy. There you go.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if you think that they haven't got anything to play for, you're kidding yourself, because there are a lot of players in the Suns lineup that know now that with the change of coach and with the sacking of Stuart Dew, there's no pressure on Stephen King. He's purely an interim coach. The spotlight is on the players now. And a lot of these guys are going to be playing for their futures and their careers. They'll be thinking, geez, you know what? If I don't impress in the next couple of weeks, I could be on the scrap heap. And
impress who?
Look, I don't think that the Suns should be taken lightly at home, especially at home. I think they play far better at home than anywhere else. And I reckon they'll give us a run for our money next week. I really do.
No.
I'm not saying that they're going to win, but I do believe that they'll be far more competitive than they were back in June when we beat them by 10 goals at the MCG on that very cold winter's day. But
it'll be up. It's
27 degrees.
There you go.
Perfect conditions for Charlie on a lovely Saturday afternoon. There won't be any dew on the ground because it's an afternoon game. The only reason it'll be slippery is if it's raining. But other than that, I think we've got to be very careful that we still bring a very competitive unit, because we've played there before and dropped games when we were expected to win.
Don't forget also, sorry, Joe, but don't forget also that, and this is foremost in my mind, the Suns had 2 very good wins in Darwin throughout the year. So let's not discount the fact that acclimatisation of conditions could actually have an effect on how the guys actually perform on the day. So,
they actually won those 2 Darwin games in consecutive weeks immediately before playing us, Brownie.
Yeah.
And some people said, well, they went from playing in 30, 32 degree heat in consecutive Saturday nights against, I think it was Adelaide and the Bulldogs, and they won both of those games.
Yep.
Then came down to cold old Melbourne, on a bitterly cold Saturday afternoon at the MCG, and they were just like fish out of water. So I think they'll be far more at home on their own ground, in their own climate, and we're the ones that might be a little bit suspect there. So
I was just basing it purely and simply on those.
Yeah. I think we've learned how to win.
Your argument, Vince.
What's that?
You're saying the Suns have got everything to play for, contracts, right?
Well, players individually
hang on. You've had
All
your
I'm
say.
saying is players individually
I'm telling you, Paddy Dow, Lachlan Fogarty,
Yeah,
Cunningham,
I understand that.
they're all playing for a finals position.
They are.
More
they
important.
are. I understand that, Joe. I'm not saying that we haven't
back.
got players in the same boat, but all I'm saying is that don't tell me that the Gold Coast Suns now, we can't make finals, we're not going to bother going out there and try it. No, I don't believe that at all.
I never said that. I just said we've got a lot more to play for. They haven't.
Okay. All right.
All right.
What happens if he does it? What happens if that King does his knee and now he's out for another 12 months?
Well, I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if they start resting players and putting them in for their operations now for the pre-season, like a lot of these bottom teams do. They do.
No.
All right.
Listen.
That's never happened, has it, Vince? Never happened.
Melbourne. Right, hang on.
Never
just let
happened.
me say something. Right now, Melbourne next week.
Finish.
When do Melbourne play? After us
I don't
or
care
before
about
us?
Melbourne.
Friday, yeah.
Why do I care about Melbourne?
They play on the Sunday. Okay. Now, I was wondering because if they had beat Hawthorn, if they played before us and they'd beaten Hawthorn, then we know we can't get top 4. So, you know.
So we're not going to try and win.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that incentive is removed. But we happen to play beforehand, so that's good. That's a good thing. Look, I think Carlton will just get over the line. I think we'll just get over the line, but not by a lot. Carlton by
10 goals.
No, not for me. No. Carlton
you.
by 21 points.
All right.
I've written this down.
Yep.
I will be the closest. Okay. On that note, Peter.
I'll tell you what, if we happen to
hang
get
on.
beat, you're going to cop it sideways next week.
The tipping comp. I'm playing it safe. I can't be topped. I don't want to brag, but, you know, scoreboard doesn't lie, Vince. Look where you are and look where I am.
Yeah, but also statistics can sometimes cloud the view. So let's get that in perspective, boys.
But Peter, those statistics are truthful. You know, sometimes I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but you know. Anyway, on that note, Peter, thank you very much for joining us. Our supporters or our viewers absolutely love listening to you. You like to tell it as it is. You don't, bullshit around, and sometimes
and you don't
some people don't
things.
like it.
I love it. I love it.
Some people don't like it, but hey, you've been there. We haven't. So we'd like to thank you for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you next Sunday evening.
No worries, guys. Thanks very much. Thanks to our viewers, and obviously you two guys have a good week. And Joe, hopefully your partner gets better soon up there. And
we'll see how she goes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Peter.
All right, mate. See you later.
See you, Brownie.
10 goals, Vince. 10. Right? Charlie to kick 6 of them. Anyway.
By the way, on my official tips, right? The last 2 weeks in a row, I've said that Carlton will win, but my official tip was St Kilda and Melbourne, just to try and catch up to you blokes. I'm falling further and further behind.
You're starting to sound like the Scott brothers. Yeah,
no,
I get them mixed up. Who's the one at Essendon? Is that Brad?
That's Brad.
Yeah. Did you hear him this week come out and say, the extra game has really affected the competition? We haven't played the extra game yet.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, we haven't played it yet. Tell us whether it's had an effect after the last round.
Exactly.
You should tell us. Yeah.
Him and his brother are the two biggest moaners in the world. Jeremy Cameron was sitting in the stand having a pie when he kicked that goal, and he goes, "Oh no, that wasn't out of bounds. It was clearly out of bounds."
Oh yeah, no, that was another very bizarre umpiring interpretation.
Anyway.
That was in fact, if a player's, I mean, who was it? Was it Myers? I can't remember who had the ball, who hand passed it to Cameron.
I think it was Stengel or
doesn't matter. Whoever it was that hand passed it to him, that action was hand passing the ball to someone who was over the boundary line. It should have been called out of bounds. That's it, out of bounds. You've disposed of the ball out of bounds, and you've given it to a player who's out of bounds. So, yeah. Anyway, imagine if that had happened in a grand final. Then what?
But Scott didn't get the decision his way. We've played too many games. You've played just as many as last year, you idiot. Anyway, it is now time for and running true to form, Vince tipped us. Another loser last week.
Hang on. Not by much.
Vince, statistics. Oh, did we
you
back
watch
it
the
for
race?
The
Did you watch the race? Our horse shot to the front just as I thought it would at the start of the race, and was pipped on the post by the horse that went down the sprint lane, or what some people call the cheats lane. But anyway, it got done into second position, so we were very close.
Anyway, so Fear the Blue. Anyway, this week's bet.
So what are we down to? We lost $8 on that bet.
Yeah, we're back to $60. Yeah, we're back to 60.
Should have backed it. Should have backed it for the place or each way or something.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Anyway,
that's right. So this
week's bet,
we've gone to Globe Derby in South Australia. Their harness racing meeting tomorrow, Monday the 14th of August, and we've picked out one here in race 5, number 5. Produce the goods, because that's what Carlton's been doing over the last 2 months, producing the goods and earning ourselves a spot in the finals. So I thought we'd go for this one, and we're going to put $10 on the nose, are we, Joe?
Okay.
I think so. I think we'll get good odds on this if it wins. I think it's got a good chance. So,
all right.
Race 5, number 5 at Globe Derby tomorrow. Produce the goods, put the house on it, put everything you got on it.
Yeah,
go hard or go home.
Bet big or get out. And it's at 2:33. I'm assuming that's Australian Eastern Standard Time.
2:33 is Adelaide time. So
is that Adelaide time? Is it?
Yeah. So it's just a little bit after 3 o'clock, Australian Eastern Standard Time on the East Coast. So yes, they'll have a little flutter on that one if you've got a few loose coins in your pocket.
Bet big.
And let's go for our own.
That brings us down to $60, Vince. So we're having a $10. I've written that down. $10 win bet.
$10 win bet. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So
if we get up, we might get back to our original balance. Let's hope.
Oh, I doubt it. You got to really pull your finger out. Well,
I will. I'll try.
Hang on. I've just got to put this up.
The Lutzer tipping phenomenon. Wow.
There you go.
Yeah, where's your tips, Joe? I haven't heard one from you. I'll tell you another tip I'm going to give you. Australian, the Matildas to win the World Cup.
I haven't got there yet. I was going to get to that.
Right, okay.
So now that Vince has spoiled it, Vince and I are very big world football fans. So as Vince has just said, Australia, miraculously, this is the best qualification of any footballing World Cup, men's or women's, or even juniors. Yep. So we're down to the last 4. We're taking on the
English,
the mortal enemy, the Poms.
Yes. And the other semi-final, by the way, is Spain versus Sweden. So the winner of Spain versus Sweden will play Australia or England in the final. How good is that going to be?
And that's the first game is on Tuesday night in Eden Park, and the second one is on Wednesday night at
Spain and Sweden. Yeah, Spain and Sweden's on Tuesday, whereas the Australia-England game is on Wednesday night, and the final, Joe,
is
when? I'm asking you.
I don't know because I haven't got my phone on. I think it's next Saturday, isn't it?
Can anyone tell us?
Sunday.
Come on, viewers, be quick. When's the final of the World Cup women's competition? I think it's Saturday night, isn't it? Surely, or is it Sunday?
I'll tell you.
I'm hoping it's Sunday because I think the girls will need the 4 days at least. I mean, I can't see a team that's playing on Wednesday in the semi-final being able to come up 3 days later. It'd have to be Sunday night, wouldn't it? Next Sunday night, the 20th.
I don't know.
Have a look at our comments because I reckon some of our viewers will be able to.
20th of August.
There you go. Thanks, David.
So Thanks, David.
Saturday. So that's Sunday. That's next Sunday night.
Okay. Yeah, next Sunday night. So hopefully, maybe during the show, we'll be able to say, "Go the world champions, Australia."
Let's hope so.
Good luck to the Matildas. Good luck to Sam Kerr. Hopefully, she can get on the park for the whole game, not just part of the game. But I don't want another penalty shootout, 7-6.
No, we don't want that again.
I was
that was so
in the
nerve-wracking,
emergency
wasn't it?
room going, yes, and everyone's looking at me, Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Anyway, all right, so it's time. It's come to that time, Vince, where we must love you and leave you. So we've hoped that people have enjoyed the show and look forward to joining you on our next show next Sunday night at 7:30. If the Matildas game is on, then we may look at putting it back half an hour like the AFL. But I'll check with Gill and McLaughlin.
We'll have a look at the times for it, and if it's not a good time to have our show on, we might even do it on the Monday.
Let me have a look.
Because if it's at 7 o'clock or 7:30, I reckon we might have to go Monday night, Joe.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I think it might be an 8:30 show. 8:30. I had this all. Well, hang on. I know what to do. Here it is. World Cup semi-final. The final is at 5 p.m.
Is that right?
But that's my time.
Yeah, well,
So
that's 8 o'clock here.
That'll be 8 p.m. So we might make a call.
Good.
And we might
not good. I think we'll have to do Monday next week.
We might do Monday, but we'll see. I might ring up FIFA and ask them to move their World Cup so that we can do our show. What do you think?
Yeah, FIFA will move a World Cup just for our little podcast.
I think they will. Anyway, before we go, I've thanked all the viewers. I've had a few comments privately. I didn't put the show up, so people were asking for the YouTube and Facebook links. People, that in future, all you need to do is just go to the YouTube channel, The Jumper Punch, or our Facebook page, The Blue Sunday, and you'll see it. But
and while you're there, like it and subscribe to it.
Yeah, while you're there, like,
follow it,
subscribe.
and get all notifications.
Yeah, and tell your friends all about it. But before we do go, Vince, let's go through the shows that are on this week. Tuesday night on the Blue Abroad channel. Tuesday, 7 p.m, you've got The Jumper Punch with the Three Stooges, Vince, Rocco, and Mars. What are you doing, Vince? What'd you do? You went.
No, it's all right.
So we've got Tuesday night, Jumper Punch on Blue Abroad. Then Wednesday night, 7 p.m. on this channel, on the Jumper Punch channel, you've got Forever Rivals. And then you've got part 2 of the interview with Andrew Mackay or Mackay, depending how you want to say it. He said it's both.
It's so Mackay.
Okay. Well, we had the first installment last week. I think, Vince, you did the interview. What's he talk about this week? His time as an administrator. Is that right? No,
well, he still continues to talk about his time playing at Carlton and through to the latter part of his career where eventually we went through, some hard times and some tough times around the early 2000s and eventually the Dennis Pagan appointment. And he played in the first year that Dennis Pagan was our coach. And that, in fact, was his last year of football where he won the best and fairest. So we talked to him about that. And then, of course, his post-football playing days, which revolved around, being on the match review panel and then at AFL in development and then coming back to Carlton as our general manager of football. There you go. And, of course, next week you've also don't forget Legends of the Jumper Punch. So I said that's Andrew McKay. And then you've got Blue Sunday. We will make an executive decision during the week as to whether we move the show to Monday. I think we probably will because I think there's a high likelihood of that. Yeah, it's highly likely. Doesn't matter who's playing. Earlier. Doesn't matter who's playing. Yeah, we can't go any earlier. So as Vince says, don't forget, like, subscribe, and share. It helps us grow the channel, and that's what we're all about. And we're all about the Carlton Football Club. So until next week, this is Joseph. Hang on. Before we go, Joe, before you go, just a quick birthday cheerio. Oh, another cheerio. Sorry. A new segment. I'm going to have to make a thing. Vince's Cheerios. I think this one's worthy. I think our viewers will even agree with me that this is a very worthy cheerio because it's to the greatest Carlton player of all time as voted around about 9 years ago at our 150th anniversary. The big John Nichols, Big Nick,
Big Nick.
John Nichols turned 84 today. So, Big Nick, I hope you had a big one. I hope it's 4 times bigger than your 21st because you're 4 times older.
And just
so
think,
84, 21 times 4.
Just think he was a ruckman and he was only 6'1", and Patrick Cripps is a centreman at 6'4".
Just goes to show how much the game has changed. But let's hope that Big Nick can continue to enjoy life and thrive, and all the very best to him. And let's hope he's had a good day wherever he's
exactly. So on behalf of Vince is gone. Anyway, on behalf of Vince Lochisano, who's suddenly disappeared, and myself, Joseph Lutzer, it's a good night, and go those mighty Blue Boys.
You down. We're the only team old Carlton knows. With all the champions they like to send up, we'll keep our end up, and they will know that they've been playing against the famous old dark blue.